United States President Donald Trump has called his Ukrainian counterpart Volodymyr Zelensky a dictator as the rift between them deepens over Ukraine peace negotiations. Donald Trump's latest broadside against Zelensky came after the Ukrainian leader challenged his claims that Ukraine has started the war. Zelensky had also spoken against being left out of the Russia-US talks held in his Saudi Arabia capital, Riyadh, on Tuesday. Lashing out at Volodymyr Zelensky, who less than 3 years ago received a standing ovation in Congress for his efforts to resist Russia's invasion, the U.S. president labeled Ukraine's leader a dictator and accused him of corruption. He accused Volodymyr Zelensky of wanting to keep the gravy train of foreign aid running. Joining me to discuss the recent exchange between the U.S. President Donald Trump and Volodymyr Zelensky, that's Ukraine's president, is global affairs analyst Dr. Bola Didiron. Good to have you join us. All right, it's been an extraordinary week in international politics. We've seen a wholesale shift in American foreign policy away from the United States' long-standing allies in Europe and toward the Kremlin. What do you make of it?
Well, I wouldn't say that it's a shift of allegiance, as it were. I think it's just typical Donald Trump in terms of using the rhetoric that is willing to move away from Europe as a negotiating tactic. But I think what is more important, really, is to look at what Donald Trump is trying to achieve. Here he is trying to force Europe into stepping up its security, given the fact that in his first term, if you remember, it did impress on NATO members to increase their budgetary allocations to defense significantly to 2%. And a lot of them obviously tightened up and sat up, but a lot of them also did not meet up that request. And this time around, he's upping up the ante again, asking them to step up their defense contribution to almost 5%. And at the same time, he's also moving away from what Europe stands on Ukraine is, which is to continually support Ukraine unconditionally until the war is won by Ukraine. For him, he does not see that happening. He does not believe that there is a path towards victory for Ukraine. So he's moving away from Europe's stance on Ukraine by taking this hardline rhetoric, this hardline stance, and using that as a negotiating tactic to push Europe into doing some of its own biddings.
I know you call it a negotiating tactic. Could it also be that this is the end of the war? In the way that Trump actually envisions it, because it does look a lot like what Russia has been asking for.
Well, I'm not sure that this is going to mean the end of the war, because I think one of the things that Joe Biden was able to do immediately, it was clear that Trump was going to win, was to provide, to pass a raft of aid.
In the agreement, or if any agreement is negotiated, there will be, of course, no NATO membership for Ukraine, and they say that's not realistic. They've also talked about U.S. not being able to guarantee Ukraine of security, and most especially, which is the one I found interesting, is the fact that there is no return to pre-border Ukraine, which means that Russia can keep the territories it wants, and that's what I was saying. Look, isn't that the kind of negotiation or agreement that Russia has envisioned?
Absolutely. What Trump has effectively handed to Russia, even before negotiation has begun, is to give to Russia everything that Russia wants. I mean, Trump was saying in the news a couple of days ago, or was it yesterday, that at the moment, Putin has all the cards, and this is partly because he believes that Putin is winning on the battlefield front. But you don't start a negotiation by giving further more cards to your opponent, and I think that this is where the problem really is. As you said, there is no guarantee that is taking off NATO membership off the table. is also not agreed that, and Putin would not agree that NATO soldiers should be securing whatever, whatever areas of armistice that they agree, or patrolling the borders. And so you've effectively, in some ways, handed Putin all the sort of all of this the negotiating areas that you would want to get into an agreement with. I think what we are also seeing is what Kamala Harris said during the campaign, which is that in foreign policy, these leaders know how to get to Trump, give, butter him up, say a lot of nice words to him, and he would fold like very easily. And we're seeing the mastery of Vladimir Putin here, a former KGB official who is, running around, who is really turning Trump into this foreign policy, infant, as it were. So it's a sad, sad case. But I think that what we are also seeing is that there is a chance for Europe to step up to the plate and to push the Americans to do something other than what Trump is trying to do at the moment.
And I was going to ask you about that, how Europe can, I know you already started touching on it, but how Europe can navigate this. Is there an opportunity in here for Europe? Can they win with Trump?
I think that the best course of action for Europe at the moment is to take seriously what President Macron has been trying to get Europe to do for a long time, which is to have a standing army that takes into account Europe's particular interest and also expands Europe's, that provides security cover for Europe. Last year, the whole of Europe, including UK, spent about $440 billion on defense, whereas the US alone spent over $880 billion on its defense. So you could see that in terms of defense spending, Europe has been dwarfed completely by the US. And since the end of the Second World War, in fact, the US has been guaranteeing Europe's security. It is time for Europe to chart an alternative course, which is to be security dependent. And so, part of what Europe needs to do, and it might not happen in the next 2 weeks or 3 weeks or the next six months, but it's to find a way so that they can become independent of the U.S. Security cover. And that would include thinking about how they can collaborate together. Even though the UK is out of the European Union at the moment, but I think it's also important for the UK to participate in this, because the UK, as you know, is only one of the 2 nuclear powers in Europe and can extend its nuclear capacity as a cover for the rest of Europe. So these are the kind of ideas that Europe has to take on going forward, which is to find ways in which they can get gradually ease the Americans out and begin to take charge of their own security interest in the future.
And part of the U.S. hegemony that it does enjoy now, and I know you and I have gone back and forth on whether that hegemony is declining or not, but part of that hegemony simply rests on the alliance it has with Europe. If Europe were to look the other way, what then happens to, because one of the things that Trump wants to do is to make America great again. But if Europe does look the other way, is that a win for Trump, or is it beginning to lose soft power?
Well, in Trump's world, Trump would think that it's a win for him because he's managed to pull the U.S. back. And the U.S. is not spending as much as it is on a lot of things, providing what it thinks free food and free cover for all of these countries that are not giving the U.S. back all that it wants. But what is really actually happening is, as you have rightly said, the gradual decline of U.S. Hegemonic influence across the world. Since the end of the Second World War, the alliance between America and Europe has helped the U.S. to sustain its global influence. And if Europe begins to pull back from that traditional alliance between the US and Europe, then it's going to affect the US's standing significantly. Don't also forget that it coincides with the rise of China, and China has been able to carve a geopolitical space for itself in Africa, where again the US has pulled back, and China is also contesting with America in the Indo-Pacific region. So these are all areas in which Trump may think that, by pulling back from Europe, that it's won because it's managed to save some billions of dollars. But in terms of its capacity to influence global politics on a wide range of issues, along with its allies, it has diminished America's influence significantly. And this will not only be a win for Russia, it will be a win for all of America's adversaries, including China. So unfortunately, it would not be. Trump is not making America great. In fact, he's doing the opposite of that with his current plans.
I mean, just interesting days ahead, especially with the latest spat between Volodymyr Zelensky and Donald Trump. Always a pleasure to have you on. Thank you so much for talking to us, Dr. Bola Adediro.
Thank you for having me, Precious.